Hi, it's Jane with the Compassion Project, and today I'm here with Laurie Bartley from Kelowna, Canada. She is a beautiful, heart-driven, compassionate woman, and I'm so honored you're here, Laurie. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Yes, it's absolutely my pleasure. My pleasure.
So, Laurie is a powerful and impactful healer. She is a Hatha Yoga Instructor, a nutritional coach, a speaker, and an author. She has volunteered at Hospice for over 14 years and has sat with and held space for over 200 people in their final breaths. This experience has gifted Laurie with an uncanny ability for the depth of compassion. She understands what is not being said and what you may never be able to say. I think this is so unbelievably
hmm
powerful, Lori.
hmm
It almost makes me emotional just reading that. And I just think it's such an important topic. And I feel like we don't talk about it enough. We don't talk about death enough and what we're supposed to do. And I feel like so many people are kind of lost in that, when it comes to saying goodbye to a loved one. So I appreciate you being
hmm
here. And
hmm Oh,
and yeah, so what I want to
me too.
start is I really want to find out what it is in you as a person that led you to do this work, to be able to sit with people and, you know?
I do know, and it's really interesting because I've never actually asked myself that question. I've never gone to that space of inquiring why. For me, there was this calling, and so I'll just bring you back to the beginning. I had been in financial services. I was a financial services professional. I was the vice president of estate planning at a national investment firm. So for me, my experience with the end of life issues had to do with financial, with estates, with wills, with trusts, with all the
Oh,
planning aspects, right? And there was an article in the newspaper that was inviting people to a workshop, and it was entitled "The Ethical Dilemmas of Death and Dying." And for some reason, it came onto my radar, and I looked at it and I went, "Oh my!" Because I saw some things in the financial services that I felt were not so ethical, right?
right.
As
Yeah.
far as things happening with transfer of funds after somebody had passed, et cetera, et cetera. So I went to this workshop, and it wasn't at all about financial. It had clergy there, and there were social workers, and there were nursing staff. There was all the caregivers were there, the nurturers, and I just felt embraced, and I learned the information that they talked about. And there was a huge mm, focus on a lady named Terry Schiavo down in the United States, and this was many years ago. And she was on life support, and there was a big controversy between her parents and her husband as to keep her on life support or to not. So anyway, this was all going on at the same time, and I was introduced to the Central Okanagan Hospice Association. I had not had a personal experience with someone close to me dying. It had nothing to do with that. For me, it was just this light came on, and I know I have always been able to sit with people in courageous space, and I've always had people just share their hearts out to me, as if you're sitting beside someone on an airplane, right? I'm sure you know it too, Jane, right? And suddenly you know their life story, and they're there, and they're
Yeah.
vulnerable, and they feel safe. So that's just been part of my life. And so I had the greatest gift to myself of saying yes to this experience of joining the Hospice Association. I sat on the board at first. I was part of the fundraising campaign to build Kelowna's first ever freestanding hospice house, and that in itself was a glorious, glorious experience. And then, of course, it led me into the family dynamics, and oh my gosh, even the definition of family totally expanded for me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, I could go on and on, but so ultimately,
Yeah.
what is it in me? I think it was simply a landing of an invitation that seemingly came out of the blue, but I know, of course, it didn't. It was designed and meant for me and others like me to say yes and to open myself in a new and expanded way.
I
And
think it's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It was just
And,
one, and you'll know, you'll have those moments in your life where you just know something is meaningful and profound even.
and you
Yeah.
feel it deeper in a
And
deeper level. You feel it, right?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And so I chose to step into it. And I
Wow.
can't
So
tell you
14
how
years.
much that's brought to me and others, but me particularly.
Oh, how much it has actually given back to you?
Oh, without question.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we need to get into this because it is interesting to me, and I think it's because they say what you don't know that you don't know about something. There's so many things we have no idea about, and I think death is scary. I think
Mhm.
sitting beside someone that is dying, I think we have a bit of fear around that. So that's why this subject is, I think, so important. So I have a girlfriend that her sister, she was my best friend from high school, and her sister passed away 3 years ago now on February 15th. Her name was Jillian White, and my beautiful friend Jennifer. Was probably the first time that I really was involved when someone was struggling. She passed away of cancer. Um, and she was in hospice in Kelowna, so where you spent all these years, but she didn't want to pass away at hospice. She wanted to pass away at home. And so she did spend time in hospice. So I went there, we'd visit her, um and I think like just going through that with my friend Jen, and we were talking yesterday, and she said that the hardest thing is to know there's this space or this time where this person is they're going to pass away. I mean, and it is coming soon, but you don't want to lose hope. But then you want to be able to say what you need to say before like when they can understand it, because sometimes I think it's, if I'm right, if they have to up the painkillers, they actually get to a place where they're not cognitively able to, they're there, they haven't
Mm.
passed. But so when is that window where you want to say what you need to say to this person,
Mhm.
and you could lose it because then all of a sudden they're not you know what I mean? Do you know what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, and I have a different viewpoint on that. So
Okay.
for me, honestly, the first death I had ever been at was what I would call a perfect death. It was serene and beautiful, and this woman was elderly, and she had not been eating for over a week. Her body was completely not taking in any foods or water. I don't know exactly how long it had been since water, but um, the woman was in the final stages, no question. Her daughter was sitting at her bedside, and her daughter had been there for hours and hours. And I, as a volunteer, walked into the room and just offered to sit with her mom for a little while so she could get up and have a cup of tea or, stretch and do what she needed to do for her own self-care. Um, and so while I was there, and the daughter was still there, she had arranged a phone call between her brother and sister who lived out of province even. And so she held the phone to her mother's ear. And her mom, from lots of accounts, you would think perhaps that window, from what you had just explained, you would think that window had possibly closed because she was in her dying process. Um, there was heartbeat and there was breath, but all of her, other organs had definitely slowed down significantly. So, but it was noticeable to me, the shift in the energy and the feeling of peace that I saw on this lady's face when the phone was held up to her ear and she heard her other children speak. Um, I absolutely believe that we are more than our physical bodies. So part of this is my energy healing background, and we communicate on many, 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 many levels. Um, Past words. Okay, so the words are, of course, important, and often they're important to the person speaking them because the intention and the love and the gifts and the touch and the holding someone in sacred space and sending that prayer to them, whether you are physically with them or halfway around the world, is so powerful. And I do know, it's another knowing. I know to my depths that Jill knew and heard everything. So I encourage people to, yes, speak and be mindful that you're not talking over someone, like even with doctors or whatever, or nursing staff, be aware that even though someone can't respond, I personally don't believe that means they can't hear. So say the I love yous and say I also share what day it is, what time it is when I'm volunteering and I'm sitting with someone in those final moments, because it may be very important to them to not pass on a certain day or to wait for another day. Perhaps it's an anniversary or something, and they would like to pass on a different day. So anyway, it's just something that I always bring with me as part of my volunteering, is letting the person know what day it is, what time it is, what the weather's like. Is it fall? I describe things, because I do believe that visualization really helps calm people too. So if we can talk about how serene it is, or how peaceful it is, or how beautiful the sun is shining today, or whatever the case may be, I do believe there's a lot of assistance that can be held within words, and yeah.
I also believe that, like you say, that we're not our body, that we're more. And then I think it's interesting. You seriously did almost make me cry when you said Jill heard every word. And I know she did. And I think sometimes for your own validation, just say it, but it's an energy that we sense, or a knowing and listening. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
That was so beautifully said. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you so much. So
Oh, you're welcome. I'm emotional too, because I do, and I remember these moments and these people that have, like I said, brought me so many gifts. So, yeah.
Yeah. So so I guess it's not worrying about if there's this window of time, or if they needed to be on higher painkiller where they don't seem like conscious. It's okay to just say what you need to say, because they will hear it, or know, or they know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And I think
I absolutely believe that. And actually, I know, I'm just trying to think, 5 people who have clinically died and come back, right? And their stories again and again and again repeat that they heard what was going on. They knew what was going on in the room. And some of them knew what was going on down the hall. It's just very interesting how, although they weren't consciously aware, as far as we could see as visitors, they certainly did have awareness.
Okay, and I've heard stories too, and totally believe it. I've heard of people with near-death experiences where they've actually been aware. They said there's almost no space or time. They're aware of like a brother flying from another country, and like knowing that they're coming. Like they just knew, even though no one told them. It's like they just felt like there was no distance.
Yeah.
Which is interesting too, right?
Oh.
So what do you feel are your greatest lessons from sitting with 200 over 200 people?
Yeah. One thing that I'd really like to share is often what I hear from the family members who remain, the ones that are here, who are grieving. Often I hear guilt about, I wasn't there when they passed. At that exact moment, I wasn't there. And they feel so badly, and they're so torn and conflicted inside. I believe that people choose the time they die. I believe they choose that moment. And I have been the one to witness many deaths without any family members around. And what I'd like to say to that is that don't feel badly and don't hold guilt about it. Please be able to let that go, let that be. And perhaps, so perspective, right? Seeing things from a different perspective. So instead of, I wish I had been there, I somehow failed because I wasn't there, to hopefully somebody was there, right? And that person was the perfect person to guide them on. Perhaps, yeah, many times what I've noticed is parents, for example, who have multiple children, they don't choose to pass with just one. They would So anyway, I've been really blessed and gifted to have been in many of those spaces where I can honor the passing of somebody, and then also speak with the family member or the best friend or whoever is there, and talk about the experience. Right? Absolutely. And sorry, that is what I was trying to say, is that people actually, I have witnessed that as well. The first death that I spoke about with the woman on the phone, she actually did. She waited until her daughter left to get a cup of tea, and she was lying immobile, right, on her bed for days and days and days and days. And this woman suddenly opened her eyes, looked through me, not at me, through me, and lifted her arms up. And she sat up in bed with this, like her arms were open and she was ready and she was being greeted by someone. And then she took her very last breath and settled back into her bed, and she had passed. And her daughter came back from tea, and I shared that with her. And,
Oh my
you know,
goodness.
it was incredible, but she waited. I know that she waited, you know,
Wow.
and yeah,
So
yeah, it's
what if there's like some
incredible.
experiences when people, it's really a suffering at the end, where some people, their passing is not like, uh like, it's like
Yeah,
you said, that death was more serene, but what
it
about,
was. It was.
is it hard to sit with
So,
someone that
oh,
when it's
yes. I've had some very difficult to sit with deaths because the person is really suffering, and you know
yeah,
I'm empath, and none of us want to see someone suffering. Heck, I don't like to see a bird that's hit the window suffer, right?
I
Let
know,
alone a
yeah,
human being.
yeah,
So there was one time where honestly, and this is where perspective comes in, Jane. This is where it was really important to me, um, because somebody was in a lot of not pain, but there, I don't know how much to explain on this. Sorry, I
okay.
don't want
No,
to
it's
get
fine.
really good. The person was really suffering, I'll put it
Yeah,
that way.
yeah,
And I remember getting very anxious. And so often I'm able to be the calming presence. And then what happens is the energy of that other person that I'm with tends to match mine. It tends to match the most calm in the room, right? So
okay.
to be there and to hold someone's hand and to just gently stroke their arm, you know, hold their hand, be present. But for me, it's about very gentle, calm, deep breathing, right? Calmness. Often you'll notice people will put really calm music in the room, you know, things like
Yeah,
that. Just that calming environment. This particular case, I could not settle myself because this person, was just really in crisis, I would say. And so there was a point where I said, I need to get up and leave the room for a little bit, shake it off, do whatever I needed to do. And as I stood up, because I was severely uncomfortable, I stopped and I said, give your head a shake, Laurie. I said, you're uncomfortable? Really? Who is this really about? Right? And how is that being of service to someone else? Right? And I'm emotional now
wow,
too, just
that's
remembering, but I
powerful.
had to give myself just give my head a shake, right? Like, really, you're uncomfortable? Let's rephrase this. And so it gave me just that moment to pause and to really recognize what was mine and what I could release and what was theirs.
Yeah.
So had that been not just a stranger, so for me, it was a stranger. It was someone I'd never met before. I just walked into the room, right? And I spent 4 hours as a typical shift, 4 hours with someone. So honestly, to be able to companion with someone, which means to be with them, to hold space with them, to bear witness to their vulnerability and their suffering, to share that mine with them, right? Um, and to recognize what is ours and what is not, right? What we can let go of, and take it from that perspective of being honored to have been asked, to have the ability to be there, to have the opportunity to be of service in that way.
Wow.
That really lands with me. Yeah, yeah.
That's so powerful for you to have had to step away, and then to have that awareness of like,
Right?
it's not about
Right?
me. That's powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. That was
Oh my
really,
goodness.
really meaningful to me, And so it also helps me with my boundaries, and commitment. So for me, it's about, I just jump both feet in. If I get a yes, and I know my body and I know my signals and I know what feels right. And when I get a yes, I'm like full in, both feet, arms open, yeehaw, yes, right?
Yeah.
So for me, just being very clear about those signals and at what point, and creating some boundaries around what's healthy for me, and yeah,
Because, and
yeah,
that was
and
actually
helpful.
a question that when my friend and I were talking yesterday about, and I think she was curious about this too, is how do you protect your heart and yourself from all, like, really thinking of all this pain, but
Mhm.
I'm getting the feeling that in some situations for you, it has been a beautiful experience, or is it, sometimes you look at it as
Mhm.
death can be
Yeah.
peaceful and loving, and like, how would you
It
protect
can,
yourself when you're
it
witnessing
can,
all this?
it can. I think, well, honestly, part of it is recognizing that I do have the capability of great love. I do have the capability of, well, I'm a good listener, although I've been just talking today. I am a very good listener, and picking up on those cues of what somebody is not saying. Because honestly, when I'm called, people, I know their name, I know their age, I know where they are. So I go wherever, and it's not always hospice house. Sometimes it's a hospital, sometimes it's a care facility, sometimes it's someone's home. It doesn't
Okay.
matter where. Like, so hospice is not a place. Hospice is a philosophy of care, right? So we
Also,
do have.
sometimes you go to someone's home too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In the Central Okanagan Hospice Association, the
Right.
volunteers, it's very diverse, the types of volunteering you can do. And yeah, and the spaces in which we volunteer. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So so hospice is a philosophy of care where you nurture the entire person. We're not looking at physical body in its exclusively. Yes, pain management is important, hugely important, but often that comes with emotional health and mental health, and nurturing a family, right?
Yeah.
And helping a family through the process, because we may not like to admit it, and we may not like to talk about it or think about it, but we are mortal beings, right? We are born to die. That is right. That is the one commonality we all have. We are all born, we all die. So the choice and the brilliance and the beauty is, how do we choose to live, right? And for
Yeah.
me, I choose to live by exploring the depths of things that are meaningful to me and important to me. And um, and I've always had this curiosity, I guess, about transitions of any kind, and I have found ways to become really comfortable within myself, so that I can first radiate this calming, loving, kind energy, and from there, being that peaceful with yourself. And you can enter a room and people notice, like, you can notice going into a room where there's been tension, right?
Yeah.
And, like,
Oh yeah.
so
I feel it.
conversely, you can bring in this amazing energy of calm, of peace, of acceptance, of inclusivity, right? So that's become a way of being for me, right? So it's not just what I do when I volunteer. It's how I am in the world, right? And we each have those choices to learn and to grow and to fuel ourselves so much that just radiates, So
Yeah, I
it's
agree. I can
it's so
totally feel it
beautiful.
in you, your
It's so
compassion, your
beautiful.
heart, your energy.
Thank
I
you.
feel like looking at life and just our purpose, and like you say, we're born to die, and but yeah, we celebrate birth, but we're afraid of death because it seems
Mhm.
final, but it isn't final.
Mhm.
It isn't final. I think that's the thing too. I think we're all, and what I believe is that we are all love, and that God or love, whatever you want to call it, is inside us. And I think it's a journey for us to get back to that place where we're present in the moment, grateful for every step, that we are loving people and caring for people like God would, or whatever you call it, higher power, whatever. I think the journey is to get back to that joy, grateful, loving spirit that you can treat everyone you meet with love and kindness. And you're doing incredible work.
Absolutely.
I think you're unbelievable. I am so
Oh,
grateful you
you.
came on here, and we could talk for a long time. I would love to have you back on, because there's so much
in a
more.
heartbeat, I would come back. Yes, because we can really, there's so much more that I'd love to share, but
Yeah.
another time.
I will definitely have you back on. Thank you so much. I think you
I'm so grateful.
helped so many people. And Laurie has an incredible website, which people can check out, zenchick.solutions. So yeah, you can go on there if you want to connect with Laurie, and reach out to her if you just want to talk, or if you need help in some way. But I appreciate you so
or on my Facebook page too. I'm under Zenchick on Facebook, and
Okay.
And from time to time, just always happy to share.
Okay, and we'll put your Facebook. We'll put the link in the comments if people want to join.
Sure. Thank
you. Thank you, Laurie, so much.
Thank you,
You're
Jane.
a beautiful person.
And my very best to Jen.
Aw, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, bye. Thanks everyone for watching.